Hi there, I'm Rue. Welcome to Crime Lime. In this video, I want to talk to you about the case of the worst terrorist attack on Norwegian soil since World War II. It was really hard to do the research for this case. Whenever I do a research for a case, I always look up any documentary, any movies based on the case. I read anything I can get my hands on, and it was really hard for this case because it hit so close to home. I was around 16, 17 when this happened, and I remember it very clearly. So yeah, it was really hard to watch and know that this just happened and could have happened to anyone in a country that's so peaceful most of the time. It was, it really hit close to home. On the 22nd of July, 2011, at 3:17 p.m., a bomb goes off in the middle of Oslo Center. Oslo is the nation's capital of Norway, and the bomb went off in the government quarter. The government quarter is a block of houses where all of the people who work in the government, like the prime minister, everyone who has a job within the government, have their offices there. And that's where the bomb went off. You can see footage of people who accidentally caught it on tape, like they were just filming something else, and all of a sudden they caught it on tape, and it's really horrifying. At first, people didn't know what was happening, because we're a very peaceful nation, and something like this hasn't happened since World War II. So first, people didn't realize that it was a bomb. And I think even if you suspected that it might have been a bomb, you didn't really want to let your mind go there. But it was just complete chaos. The buildings were completely destroyed. All of the windows were just shattered. 8 people died because of it. While this was going on, of course, the police are trying to figure out what happened. They're trying to make sure that the prime minister is safe. They're trying to make sure that people are getting help. It's just all around chaos. Unfortunately, because we haven't had a terrorist attack or anything like that, they were very ill-equipped as to what to do. The first thing you should do if there is an attack of any kind is block off the city to make sure that the perpetrator or perpetrators don't get away. This was sadly not done. And as the whole nation was watching, I remember this was live on TV, it was breaking news. Like, I feel like everyone remembers where they were when the bomb went off in Oslo. You watched it on the news. It's basically the Norwegian equivalent of 9/11. And I remember being really scared because I have relatives, people I know who live in Oslo, and I was really scared that someone I knew who works downtown might have been hurt. It was just chaos. Everyone was worried, everyone was watching, everyone was trying to figure out what had happened and how to make it better. The immediate thing that happens is that people jump to conclusions. This was 2011, and when it comes to terrorism, people thought of extremist Islamic organizations like Al-Qaeda. And that's immediately what a lot of people thought had happened, that this was a terrorist attack committed by Al-Qaeda. I remember being really scared, and I really hoped that it wasn't that, particularly because I knew what would happen. If it turned out that it was someone who had been radicalized and who was Muslim, I knew that that would fuel so much hate. And I, and anyone with common sense, knew that if that was the case, people who are Muslim would be treated horribly by very bigoted people after this. Immediately, before anyone knew who did this, there were attacks against people who either have darker skin color or who, look Muslim. I feel like whenever something like this happens, really hateful, bigoted people just jump on the chance, and they're like, yeah, finally I have an excuse to get out all my anger and be a bigoted asshole. And there were attacks against Muslims and people who might have looked Muslim. I find it really alarming that the police didn't do anything about it, and it was kind of glossed over after the fact, like no one looked into it. I find that hella unprofessional and not okay. Fortunately, it wasn't someone of foreign descent. It wasn't someone of a different religious view than the majority of Norway who had done this. It was the most anonymous looking, blonde, blue-eyed, pale-faced Norwegian man. Like if you were to see him in a crowd of people, he would literally be what you would describe as anonymous. A face easily forgotten. His name? Anders Behring Breivik. A right-wing extremist, neo-Nazi, and hater of anyone who doesn't look just as anonymous as him. He had spent several years cooped up in his mother's apartment, getting more and more isolated from the world and more radicalized in his neo-Nazi, right-wing extremist viewpoints. And he had decided that the 22nd of July 2011, he was going to show the world exactly what he felt. And he's the one who triggered the bomb in front of the government quarter. Sadly, he wasn't finished. As I said, they failed to block off the city, and he got away. And 2 hours after his first attack, at 5:06 p.m., he arrived at Utøya, a small island just outside of Oslo. On the island, there was a political gathering of youth. It was the youth wing of the ruling political party, Arbeiderpartiet. They were having a summer camp on the island. Approximately 550 to 720 people were gathered. Most of them teens and children. And that is where Anders Behring Breivik went after setting off the bomb. To get to the island, you had to take a ferry. That's how far the island was from the mainland. You could see the island plainly, but it was still a distance enough that you would have to take a boat to get to the island. People had already been notified of the bomb, as I said. It was live on TV, everyone knew. So when he showed up, and he was dressed in a fake police suit that he had fashioned himself, they thought that he was a police officer coming on board the island to save everyone, to keep them safe. They even sent over 2 adults from the island to check his credentials, and he was so convincing that they drove back with him and helped him carry on board and into the island his equipment that they thought was for safeguarding the island, but that was really chests full of ammunition and guns that he was planning on killing people with. When he gets to the island, the first thing he does is kill those people. He killed the 2 adults who had just granted him access to the island. The location where you get off of the ferry is actually sort of secluded, so you have to go up a hill to get to where the tents were with all of the kids. So when the kids heard the shots, they thought that it was a in bad taste prank. They thought that someone had set off fireworks, that someone had heard about the bomb and thought it was hilarious to set off fireworks. It wasn't until kids who were closer to where he started his rampage, where he shot the 2 adults, started running in towards the rest of the people of the island, that they realized that it was not fireworks. People were screaming, "Run, run, he's coming to kill us." The island is very small, considering how many people were on the island and the layout of the island. Even though there are trees and places you could hide, it was very hard to find a hiding spot that wouldn't be easily seen. And since the police were so ill-prepared, they didn't realize what was happening until way too late. Even if you did find a hiding spot, there was very little hope of coming out of this unscathed. For 72 minutes, almost an hour and a half, Anders Behring Breivik had the island completely to himself, no police showing up to save anyone, and he was utilizing that time as best he could. He was systematically walking around the island, shooting people and killing them. At first, the kids were really confused because he was wearing a police uniform, so people who hadn't seen him from the beginning thought that when he arrived, like when he showed up in their vision, thought that when they saw him that he was there to help them. That it was a police officer who had heard the shots and who was coming to save them. He even beckoned them to come to him, and they did. And then he systematically executed them on the spot. That's when the rest of the kids realized, oh my god, he's dressed as a police officer, but he's killing us. For 72 minutes, it was like a horror movie on that island. People tried to get away by swimming away. People did manage to get away, but a lot of them were shot while they were in the water. He was systematically walking around the island and just killing everyone, and they had no means of escape. Witnesses say that he laughed whenever he shot someone, and he acted as if he was in a video game. So whenever he shot someone, he sort of did a woohoo, and he was laughing afterwards. Other witnesses say that he walked up to them, pointed the gun at them, then laughed, lowered it, and walked away. In some sort of twisted, I'm God and I decide when you die. Your life is in my hands. One group of people who didn't know that he was dressed as a police officer, even though that a lot of people were saying it, when he came around the corner to where they were hiding, they thought that he was a real police officer. He was walking around this island calm as can be. He wasn't running, he wasn't shouting, he was just strolling leisurely, killing people. So when he walked up to them, I guess you hope, it's wishful thinking, finally someone has come to save us. He walks up to them and he asks, oh, have you seen the perpetrator? And they go, no, we haven't seen him. Oh. And one of the kids realizes that there's something wrong with this man. One of the kids manages to get away just as he raises the gun and kills all of the people that they were hiding with. The amount of dead bodies on that island, it was horrifying to watch. Another thing that was even more horrifying was the police were not doing their job. They didn't get there until 72 minutes had passed, but media got there. And you were literally watching this live on TV. You could see people hiding around the island. You could see people swimming away, swimming for their lives. You could see people dead in the water. You saw people getting shot. It was just horrifying. And yet the police were 72 minutes late. By the time that the police arrived, the kids were so traumatized, they thought the police were part of the people trying to hurt them because the guy was dressed as a police officer. And because it's an island, the water makes the sound echo, so you couldn't really hear where the shots were coming from. So from their point of view, it must have sounded like there was more than one gunman and the shots were coming from everywhere. So when the real police arrived, they started throwing rocks at them, trying to defend themselves. When he was apprehended, he just went, oh, okay. It was very, very, very strange. They went in, arrested him, and he was just like, okay. Calmly puts down the gun and gets arrested. Like, oh, you caught me. Oops. 69 people died on that island. Most of them, kids. Teenagers, children as young as 8 years old. People with their whole life ahead of them. And that's why he did it. He wanted to kill the future leaders of tomorrow. He wanted to make sure that he had eradicated everyone with opposing beliefs from him. What were those beliefs? Well, I lightly touched upon the fact that he is an extremist right-wing neo-Nazi. He was so opposed to multiculturalism, and he wrote this 1,600-page manifesto that he had posted before he went on this rampage online, where he talked about how his plan was to kill the prime minister and to basically perform a coup, take over the government, and to make sure that no one could be the leaders of tomorrow. He went in and killed the youths too. The ruling party, Arbeiderpartiet, are pro-immigration, are pro-multiculturalism, stuff like that, and that's what he was vehemently against. When they arrested him, he lied. and said that he was one of many, and that unless they got the prime minister, because he was very disappointed to hear that the prime minister had survived, but as long as the prime minister and the government promised to immediately put a ban on immigration, his associates wouldn't perform the third attack. The first attack was the bomb, the second attack was killing the kids, the third attack was, unknown, and he wasn't gonna tell them what it was, but it sure was gonna happen unless they gave in to his demands. Of course they didn't. This is a delusional, crazy person, and they're not gonna give in to demands like that. And it soon became evident that he was a lone wolf. Although he had been radicalized by insane, scary places of the internet where people believed the same as him, he was a lone wolf in his plan. So now starts the trial. It was a relief to know that he did it. As I said, it was really scary with the kind of fear that people had of people who might not look ethnically Norwegian, and that, oh, it's probably the others who did this, the others are attacking us. So to learn that it was one of us, so to say, someone who's blonde, blue-eyed, ethnically Norwegian, it was a wake-up call. He had performed these attacks in hopes of starting a race war, in hopes of getting more hate going, and in hopes of people becoming more anti-immigration. Ironically, wonderfully ironically, the opposite happened. Before this attack, people were more skeptical of immigration. After this attack, people were more open-minded. He achieved the opposite of what he wanted. During the bombing, a man who had survived war in his home country in the Middle East, instead of running away like a lot of other people were doing, he ran towards where the bomb had gone off, where he had heard it, because he knew that someone would be needing help. If there was a bomb, there would be injured people. So, wonderful stories of coming together came out, and I find it gleefully ironic that that happened instead of his intended goal. That, it showed us that we're not different, and even if we look different or if we have different beliefs, we're not different, we're all human. That serves him right. And the instance of the guy who ran toward the bomb to help someone, he actually saved someone's life who was bleeding out on the pavement, really goes to show that there are no others. It's only bad people and good people, and you don't know what they might look like. A very white Norwegian guy killed a bunch of people, and an immigrant man saved someone's life. And I think that really cemented a newfound optimism of pro-immigration. But yeah, so the trial starts. People were angry. People were so angry. They made it so that no one could go in there and sit and watch the trial. Usually you can watch trials, but they knew that there would be a chance of either people who agree with him would show up and watch the trial and might do something, or people who are so angry by what he did might show up and do something. So the trial starts. And the first thing they need to assess is whether or not he is crazy, whether or not he is competent to stand trial. And he is assessed. And the psychologists come out with a very unanimous verdict that he is paranoid, he is got antisocial personality disorder, he's basically a sociopath, he's a narcissist, he's got very disturbing, grandiose thoughts of himself, he isn't in touch with reality, he isn't, he's basically a nut job, and he isn't competent to stand trial. When Anders Behring Breivik heard this, he was very angry, and he said no. And the defense was like, what do you mean? This is the only way to, defend you for what you did. And he's like, no, I'm not crazy. Because the thing is, if you're labeled not competent to stand trial, you won't really have a trial in the traditional sense. You will basically just be, given a sentence by a judge, as in, to be helped medically because you're crazy. But he didn't want that. He wanted his day in court, and he forced his defense team to retract it, to say, actually, you know what, we just, we said that he's crazy, we're gonna have to take that back because he's hell-bent on testifying in his own defense, and, that he was completely sane when he did it, and that's his stance. I mean, the prosecution was like, hell yeah, we want to prosecute this asshole. So, He was delusional, though. He, very, very disturbed. He wanted to cross-examine the prime minister, and that's not a thing you can do when you're on trial. Norway isn't on trial. The prime minister isn't on trial. You're the one who did the thing. You're the one who's gonna get cross-examined. Like, this isn't, like, what? He's just all kinds of nutty, crazy. And a lot of people testified, survivors testified, heartbreaking. And then he testified in his own defense, and it was basically just like this bizarre neo-Nazi thing. He did the Heil Hitler salute in court, and he talked about how he was part of a big organization called the Knights Templar. I don't know, what is this, a World of Warcraft crew? I don't know. But that he was part of the Knights Templar, and that they were going to take over the world, and that multiculturalism was terrible, and that there would be another attack, and that people like him was going to take over the government, and he was just, same old, same old. He wanted that opportunity to just spew his hate. And it's really disturbing to watch because he was like laughing in court when victims were testifying about the horrible things he did to them, maiming them, shooting them, killing their friends, executing their friends in front of them. He was laughing and smiling, like he thought it was really funny because he's sick. He is disturbed. He was sentenced to the strictest punishment that Norway gives, which is 21 years in prison. Now, a lot of people might say, oh my god, he only got 21 years in prison, he's gonna get out. No. If you're mentally disturbed, which he is, you're not gonna get out until you're quote-unquote better. And he has shown no such betterment. While incarcerated, he has to be in isolation because the general population of the prison, even though, they might be terrible people and have done terrible things, he's like in a maximum prison, they would kill him, they would hurt him, and so he has to be in isolation. In isolation, he has his own room. Norway is infamous for comfy prisons. We focus on rehabilitation, although, a lot of people, including me, wouldn't feel bad about just, putting him in a cell and throwing away the key and letting him starve to death in there. That's not humane, and we are not going to stoop to his level. So he's in isolation. He has a TV. He has a gaming console. He plays games all day, basically. Fun fact, like a few years after he was sentenced, he started suing the government, complaining that his sentencing was inhumane because, and I'm not kidding right now, he didn't get the newest games he wanted. Yeah, that complaint was, that was not taken seriously, and he was told, shut the fuck up. He killed people, and he's gonna complain about things being inhumane because he doesn't get to communicate with people who think the same things as him, because he can't have communication with people outside of, on the internet and stuff, because he's just insane, and he would find people who would think that the things he did were awesome. There's disturbing people out there who think the things that he did are great and who worship him, so he can't have access to the internet and talk to people like that. And because he didn't get to have video games that he wanted, the newest, the brightest, the shiniest. So apparently that's inhumane, but him killing 77 people isn't. Yeah, he's just one self-centered, narcissistic, sociopathic, disturbed person. After what happened, we wanted as a nation to not let him win. As I said, after what happened, people were more in favor of immigration. People were less skeptical of people moving here from other countries. And people were more inclined to be open-minded and to welcome people with open arms. Another thing we did was, right after, instead of reacting with anger and violence, we wanted to show that he hadn't won. And all over Norway, we had flower parades. where we walk in silence to a designated spot and leave flowers for those who had their lives taken. I thought that was really nice. It made me very angry when I was walking though, because there was a very inconsiderate person gossiping behind me, like so disrespectful, like we're walking in silence because people died. Why are you laughing and gossiping? Shame on them. But yeah, in general, people were very respectful. So after this happened, of course there would be an inquiry. Like, why didn't the police shut off the town? Like, why didn't the police make sure that he didn't get away? So, like, if they had, he wouldn't have been able to kill all those kids. There was a lot of flaws in the police reaction protocols. Alarmingly, what also came out was they could have stopped him from doing any of it, the bomb included, because he had been buying a bunch of stuff online that had gotten him flagged. So flagged with the people who oversee, like, oh, maybe someone's doing like some terrorist stuff. Like if you buy like a lot of fertilizer and like other components that you could make into a bomb, which is what he did, or if you like buy like weapons, stuff like that, you get flagged. And he had bought monstrous quantities of what he made his bomb out of. He had used a family farm to compile it. It was huge. And yet they had done nothing. He was put on a list, but he wasn't investigated, or like it wasn't looked into. Why? Because they were so focused on the threat of extremist Islamic organizations. This is a huge problem. If you start thinking that the big bad wolf is going to look a certain way, all of a sudden you're going to overlook someone who's actually up to no good. The bad guy is never going to look a certain way, and you have to be cautious of everyone. And in a lot of countries, America included, there's a lot of right-wing extremist organizations, neo-Nazi organizations that are springing up and who are doing hateful crimes, but they rarely get any focus on that. And all they focus on is, oh, we're afraid of Islamic terrorists, when most of the attacks have been carried out by right-wing extremists. And Norway fell into that trap too. They could have stopped him if it weren't for that mindset of, oh, but he's a white Norwegian guy, it's probably fine. But it wasn't. He was up to no good, and he did horrible damage. So, they got their asses reamed by that. Hopefully they've changed. I think they've put a lot of new protocols into place, but it's a little late, especially when it could have been prevented. Especially when that they were so late in saving those kids. When you see that media choppers got there before the police, if media choppers have better response time than the police, something is severely wrong. All in all, 8 people died in Oslo because of the bomb. 69 people died on the island because of the rampage. Over 300 people were affected for life. And the thing is, this summer camp, it was people from all over Norway. It wasn't like it just affected one area. People had come in from all over Norway to attend this summer camp, so it affected every single part of Norway. People lost their loved ones. People I went to school with had survived. They had to drop out of school because they were so mentally traumatized. It affected a whole nation. But I'm glad that we didn't let him win. He gets to rot until he dies. That's what he deserves. And, I think less xenophobia came out of it. I hope the police are better at their job because of it. He doesn't get to win. There's several movies if you want to see what it would be like to have been there. UTØYA-JULY. If you're interested in looking into this case, I recommend watching them. They're very hard to watch, but they're very true to what happened. I hope you found that case interesting and that you want to hear more Crime Lime. If you do, remember to subscribe, leave a like, and do comment below what other cases do you want me to cover in this new series. Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, Katbra, Madayana Jaworska, Ono Balloons, Ellie, and Splackjack. You make this possible. If anyone's interested in supporting this new series, there's a link below. Don't forget to join me next Wednesday for our very special Halloween episode of The Halloween Murder, a Norwegian case you've probably never heard about.